I am recording all this.
Stop.
You got that James Dean daydream looking ahead. What is it? 5-star reads of the year so far.
Of 2023. Because who knows? We might be in like 2027 and people are looking back.
Or it might be
videos.
2027 by the time I finish editing this video.
You're feisty. How many of those have you had?
I don't know, you made them for me. In the past 8 months, the 5-star books that you've read so far.
Spoiler, I don't have many.
You've been having a bad year?
Actually, no, it's been a very good year. The majority are like 4 stars.
Oh, shame on you. I've actually had a fantastic year because last year was freaking awful. I almost gave up reading last year. Yeah. So far this year, I've had probably one of the best reading years ever, actually.
When I look at the year as a whole, it's like solid. It's really solid, but like standouts, there's
So
not
it might
many.
be a 5-star year, just not very many 5-star books.
But here's the catch. The reason why I do think that this is a fantastic year of reading for me is because the 5 stars that I have read will be my favorite books.
The first books that were 5 stars for me this year, which were honestly life-changing. It's not just one book, but it's a series. And each one of those books, I think maybe the first one was 4 stars, and then the rest, I think, were all 5 stars. And this series, honestly, it blew my mind. And that would be the ACOTAR series. Okay, I'm joking. That's it.
You would have been a really good actor.
No, the series is actually The Three-Body Problem, or it's actually called The Remembrance of Earth Past. I'll write it down, but it's this series. Honestly, a quick summary of it. Basically, the human race makes contact with an alien race. The alien race is hostile. They're coming over. They will be here in 400 years, and they're coming to take over the solar system. And it's basically the story of those 400 years and what happens to the human race. There is main characters throughout the history, and honestly, it is just the pinnacle of science fiction. I grew up reading science fiction. The main books that got me into reading were science fiction, stuff like Foundation, Ender's Game, and all that stuff. And personally, I thought that the best years of science fiction novels were behind us, that the classics, the best ones, had already been written because it had been a while. I mean, my favorite science fiction book was Ender's Game, and that was written in 84, 85, Speaking for the Dead in 85. And then here comes along The Three-Body Problem, and this 3-book series came out. It's by a Chinese writer, and it is basically my generation's contribution to the best science fiction novels of all time. And personally, surprisingly, I think it's actually probably the best.
Wow.
I think this is the best science fiction series ever written, considering the fact that I've read, like the marquee ones, like all the Foundation, Isaac Asimov, Orson Scott Card. I've read the Dune series, stuff like that. And I think personally this is the best science fiction books. That's why I'm saying that I think that this is probably one of the best years for me reading so far. I would compare it to maybe the years when I read like A Song of Ice and Fire.
Right.
And it just ends up being about everything. It ends up being about existence. It ends up being about life. It ends up being about human beings. It ends up being about the universe as a whole. So would I recommend it to everyone? Absolutely not. And I'm not saying it as in they're too hard to read or anything like that. I'm just saying that the books are a little bit impersonal. So for example, if you're a person that likes to read books that are about characters and getting into their lives, and the actual main character, I think, of the book is the human race as a whole.
He would come home just like out of his mind, just wanting to give me the play-by-play of what had been going on. And when I tell you, like, he's explaining to me something that is so convoluted, so intricate, I was like, but how many books in are you? How many books are part of the series? And he goes, no, I'm still in the first one. I'm like, I don't understand how all of this can happen in one book.
Yeah.
In our relationship, I always try to read the books that feel like change his life so that I can get, a really good idea of the things that going on in his head and things that he liked. I remember
And
when
I
we
try
first
to
started.
and I try to read the books that you're into just so
Right.
I can mess with you.
No, that's not true.
And just not to-
when
yeah,
we
I wanna-
first started dating, you know, do you remember when I found out we were friends and he had never read the Harry Potter series? And I was like, well, I can't be friends with you anymore. Like, it's not even gonna happen.
I still think they're overrated, but it's fine. I could say that. I've read all of them. They're good. They're great. They're great. I just don't think.
Anyway,
the
your
thing is-
opinion on Harry Potter was not part of the context of this conversation. What I was saying is how nice it was that when we started dating,
Yeah.
he was like, okay, well, to understand you more as a person, I am going to read the series.
And also,
the
at some
same
point, you
way-
have to read them too.
Granted, but there were
Yeah.
other things that you read as well. Like I read, you know, Ender's Game and I read, you know, World War Z. So I can't necessarily tell you I'm gonna read it. He would
I
come
wouldn't expect
home
anybody.
so excited. And he would say things like, I just need someone else to read it so I could talk to them about it. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm
It's
so
hard.
sorry, it can't be me. Like,
They already have a Chinese TV series based on the first novel, and they are making a Netflix series. So if you want to be a hipster and get in on the ground floor and say that you read the books and liked the Three-Body Problem before Netflix made it cool, now's your time.
my favorite book of the year so far, and has been added to my favorites shelf, is historical fiction. And I've had this book, Next Year in Havana by Chanel Cleaton, on my TBR since way before the Reese's Book Club pick symbol was on there. If you didn't know, Gia and I are both of Cuban heritage. Gia was actually born in Cuba my mom was born in Cuba, all my grandparents were born in Cuba, my dad was born here right after my grandparents immigrated. Stories about Cuba are very hit or miss for us. A lot of stories tend to romanticize the island, and as much as we would love to enjoy that, because Cuba, in the memory of our grandparents when they were there before the revolution of 1959, Cuba is just as beautiful and should be romanticized for what it used to be. It's no longer, unfortunately, the country it used to be before the revolution. Could be controversial a little bit, even within the Cuban culture. There's a lot of different opinions about the current status of the country. However, those romanticized novels about how wonderful it is to travel to Cuba and how beautiful the island is and how much you should just go, yeah, it's hard for us to swallow because a lot of that is just not accurate. Next Year in Havana is a story about a girl whose grandmother has just passed away, and her grandmother's last wish is to have her ashes be spread in Cuba. This girl is, you know, roughly my age, so there's a lot about this book that was very personal to me, and I connected on many ways. And my mom is now reading this book, and she has told me she's already cried like 3 times, and that it's, you know, it's a hard book to read just because of how accurate it portrays our story as Cuban immigrants. It's very interesting to have her portray going to Cuba and seeing what the country looks like and what the island looks like compared to the romanticized version that her grandmother would always tell her about. Basically, Next Year in Havana is based off of a saying that still relevant today for us Cubans here in Miami back in the, you know, early 60s, into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, too. Still today, we say, you know, next year when we're back in Havana in our home. And unfortunately, to that day that never happened. I feel now like I have a better grasp of what it's really like to be in Cuba right now. Gia was actually recently.
Yeah, I think I came back from Cuba, from visiting Cuba, I think like 2 to 3 months
Before I started reading.
before
this
you
one.
started reading that book, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm actually very grateful to that book because the funniest thing is that the author, I believe, is
I haven't even spoken about
lady that was actually born and raised, I believe, even in the same neighborhood that she was raised in, that Aliana was raised in. So it's
Here
kind of
in Miami.
right. So it's kind of almost the story of a woman that is very much in the same place that she is in, going back to Cuba to discover Cuba. So in truth, it's very nice because it's almost like she is going through the experience of discovering Cuba and learning more about it, and learning more where she comes from, what it is now, and all that stuff. That being said, sometimes you would talk to me about the book and you would ask me questions about the book. A lot of the questions you would ask and a lot of the things that you would say would be like, I was thinking in my head like, yeah, dude, yeah, duh. Like you would ask me like, is it really
like that? I mean,
you would ask me like,
extent.
is it illegal to to kill a cow or to eat beef in Cuba? And I was like, yeah, dude, like that's like a running joke.
The living conditions nor the dangers of visiting Cuba surprised me, but there were certain things that you would only know if you go and you visit and you figure out, you know, trial by fire of how dangerous it is and how sad it is to visit a place that was once a paradise.
I think to a person that is in your position, that is a, what is it, first or second generation Cuban American, I think this book is an amazing resource. Yeah. I think though, for anyone that has experienced Cuba firsthand, like myself, like my mom, for example, this book is a lot of because of the fact that my experience is so much deeper with the island, with the setting, the book actually feels somewhat superficial. Versus if it was written by a person that maybe lived on the island for years, was born on the island and stuff, there could be a lot more like deep cuts, insider baseball, and all that stuff, and you can build a stronger connection with someone that's actually from the island. So my viewpoint is kind of niche. I don't think this book was written for people that were born or lived on the island or anything like that. I think this book is perfect and was probably written for people like yourself, or people that have even less experience with Cuba, and for that, I think it is perfect.
For me, who's kind of in between, who I've never been to Cuba, nor will I ever go to Cuba,
I think it's perfect too.
This book was written for me. This character is me.
It's you. Yeah.
So much so that I read the second one, and then the third one.
Oh, there's a fourth one?
And then I bought the fourth one.
There's a fourth one?
And I bought the fifth one. And I just...
That one's upside down.
Yeah, I can't. I got this. So far, every single book I've read from Chanel Clayton has been a 5-star read. And that's not just because I'm a Cuban American and I relate to these stories on a very personal level, but because they're just written so well. Fast-paced, funny, romantic. There's some romance. It's mainly historical fiction and about the culture and what was going on in society at the time. But of course, they sprinkle in some fantastic romance in there, and every single book has been an absolute hit.
The first cover is incredible.
The first cover is
so nice.
It looks like my grandma. Like, show it off again. I'll show it off again.
Yeah, it literally looks like pictures of basically older women that I used to see in Cuba, like in old photo albums or stuff like that. The outfits. And, I do have a recommendation if you are interested in Cuba but don't necessarily want to read, this kind of books, or Bacardi's Fight for Freedom. It is basically the story of Cuba but told through the Bacardi family, like the Bacardi rum family. But that one's probably the best book about Cuba that I've read.
You're like a historical book with a little bit of flavor.
A little bit of flavor.
It tastes like rum.
Yeah.
Like a mojito.
Yeah. My next 5-star read, we actually both share this book as a 5-star.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And because of the fact that she read it, I actually have it physically. So it's a man called Uwe, I think it is. It's actually, it's Swedish. It's actually called A Man Called Otto here. I believe that they made a movie, which we haven't seen, with Tom Hanks.
The book is always A Man Called Uwe.
So generally speaking, when I go to try to find new books and stuff like that, I'm not really... Maybe I should get better at trying to find other people that I can get recommendations from. But generally speaking, I basically go to just whatever's popular, which usually turns out to be a minefield.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, the majority of readers are not necessarily like me.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the majority of readers are looking for something else. ACOTAR. And I end up reading things that I'm not very interested in. So most of the time when I click on whatever's popular, I'm rolling the dice. This time around, it turned out to be good in my favor. I found this book, A Man Called Uwe. Basically, it is the story, I'm trying not to reveal too much, but it is basically the story of this older curmudgeon guy living in this neighborhood, and the way that he sees the world, and the way that he is trying to adapt to essentially a new world that is moving beyond him. I remember I read this book. I told you I love this book. I told you this book almost made me tear up twice on my commute home. And then I told you about it, and then you read it, and then I got a text later on while I was at work telling me, you are Uwe. And that is honestly the reason why I like the book so much, is because this person basically thinks like me. He's the kind of guy that, you know, he doesn't understand why his neighbor can't back up a trailer into his own driveway, and gets infuriated with his young neighbor that can't
change a light bulb.
Can't change a light bulb, so he just goes in, takes the neighbor out, and backs the truck into his own driveway. But in all honesty, this book is very surprising, and it wouldn't surprise a lot of people that this book it's actually kind of like a love story. It's just not a very common love story the way that it is told now. Most of the time now, what you're really reading is romance novels, but this is a true love story, a real love story, and you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is not a, you know, I'm so passionate about this person love story. This is a more like, I really, really love that person, and life just doesn't always go your way all the time, even if you're good. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. But yeah, I remember quotes from this book still that I can recite, and I'm not gonna say them right now because it is gonna make her cry. So if you want like a really, really heartfelt,
it's not a sad book. I mean,
yeah, no, it's not.
It's not.
But it is. This is the best kind of book.
Yeah, like I'm.
Oh my God, you're actually crying.
Because that was really sweet that you said that, like, this is what true love is in the end.
Yeah, this is true love. It's not. Oh, he was my wing leader, and I'm so attracted to him, and the way his muscles shine while he pilots his dragon.
You're crying too.
I'm not gonna cry, but this made me. Yeah, this book makes you tear up a little bit, because it really does feel like real people trying to do their best, and those are the best kind of books. It is real people trying to do their best, failing and succeeding sometimes.
Did you almost cry on the bus?
Yeah, that's basically what happened. I don't want to feel this way right now. You have a main character in the book that is presented as the one person no one would ever like, but in reality, he is the one person that is doing things the way that you should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just the world around him is the one that has changed for the worse. And he has stayed the same, and now he's the odd one out.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
100%.
Right.
You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel new sympathy for the curmudgeons in your life.
Right.
Yeah, no, I absolutely adored this book. I tore through it in like 2 days, and it was like a warm, comfy, cozy blanket. And I wish Ovo was a real person. I would go find him and be his best friend.
There's a lot of those people.
Yeah, I know. And you're young. You're a young Ovo.
Yeah.
So my, I think, last 5 stars so far this year is Carrie Soto is Back. Taylor Jenkins Reid has quickly become one of my favorite authors. Like, she comes out with something, I'm going to read it right away. She's the one who wrote Daisy Jones and the Six.
That's good.
Seven Husbands. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Tower Castle?
Oh, stop. But what I really like about Taylor Jenkins Reid is that it is exactly that. She wrote about a band in Daisy Jones and the Six, and the recording process and that fame, as if, you know, like somebody who knew what they were talking about. Then she wrote Evelyn Hugo as if, you know, knowing about the glamour era, the golden age with movies and fame. Malibu Rising was a lot about surfing and a lot about rock and roll. And then she writes Carrie Soto, which is about a tennis player.
I could respect that. I like that, actually.
What I love about Carrie Soto is Back, I wanted to play tennis. I finished that book thinking, I'm a tennis player now. I can go watch tennis and understand what's happening.
You're setting me up for a trap. In our community, we have tennis courts. You have never even walked into them.
We played pickleball once.
It's basically tennis without running.
I think what I like about Taylor Jenkins Reid is that she doesn't get too wild with her stories. Her stories are all very specific and concise, and they do what they do. I loved Carrie Soto. I thought the character was super intriguing. She wasn't afraid to be the badass, competitive, not afraid to look like a to win and do what she had to do to become the tennis star that she always dreamed of being. I think there was so much character development from the start to the finish of that novel without it being unrealistic that the character completely changed. No, I feel like she grew. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid writing. I think it's super intriguing, super fun, and very general fiction. Like, anyone could like it. Like, I know that you're not a huge fan of Daisy Jones and the Six, but it didn't lean.
Good. No, but it was good. It was good.
Yeah. I told him, I'm like, of all the Taylor Jenkins books, I think Carrie Soto's Back is the one that's you might like the most because it's so rooted, it's so focused on tennis. Like, it doesn't try to do other things and like tell the story of this girl training to be a world-class tennis player.
I'm willing to give it a shot. I don't so much like the trend of an author essentially committing their life to writing a particular series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, even though I will read all the Jack Carr books because they're very, very entertaining, it kind of makes me feel a little bit sad because I'm thinking, oh, he's a great writer. I wish he would do something else. So I really, really respect the fact that she would write a book about a rock band and then turn around and write a book about, tennis.
And you know what's fun? In the Taylor Jenkins
universe.
Oh
my God, it's a universe. Oh, God.
They all kind of like.
That's funny.
Sometimes like characters are mentioned because like Evelyn Hugo is a huge famous actress, so like she'll be talked about in passing. And the band Daisy Jones and the Six will be talked about, in other books. And Carrie Soto is a famous tennis player. She'll be talked about in passing in a headline or whatever in one of the other books. That was my last 5-star read. Do you have another one?
Yeah, so this is another series, and that's something I've spoken about before, which is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. I am now going to start on Oathbringer, but this year, so far, I've already read A Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. Way of Kings, 4 out of 5. Both books are like 45 hours of listening. Both books are over 1,000 pages long. The only reason why I might not give Way of Kings 5 stars is because Words of Radiance was actually better and considerably better, to the point that if Words of Radiance is a 5-star, is Way of Kings actually a 5-star as well? But also the characters are so strong, especially when it comes to Words of Radiance, the conclusion and the last 20 hours of that book, which, or last, 30% of that book, which might as well be longer than most other books, is amazing. It almost reads as if it was a movie. To try to summarize it, it would basically be another fantasy world, kind of like Middle Earth, kind of like a Song of Ice and Fire, where where basically you have a bunch of different type of little races here and there, but also the world goes through these cataclysmic events where you have these Voidbringers that come around every a few thousand years and wreak havoc, and the world just kind of has to deal with them, and they haven't had one of those in a very, very long time. Kind of like the White Walkers, now that I think about it. Yeah. But in the books, they do have like basically these knights that used to fight off these White Walkers or these Void Bringers, and they disappeared thousands of years ago, and now everything is kind of coming back. I don't know how to describe it. It's just the thing.
It literally sounds like Game of Thrones.
Yeah, if you describe it, it sounds so generic, but it really isn't. No, there's no dragon.
No dragons.
No dragons. No dragons.
I love dragons.
Let me get.
See, I would read those, I think, over Three Body Problem.
I would definitely recommend them over Three Body Problem to anybody. Anybody that's willing to stomach a, 1,200, 1,300 page book. So yeah, anyway, in summary, A Man Called Uva, Stormlight Archive, Three Body Problem series.
Plus Carrie Soda and Next Year in Havana, along with the rest of the series, When We Left Cuba, and Our Last Days in Barcelona.
What else do you think is going to be a 5-star this year?
Fourth Wing.
5 stars?
I think it's gonna be a 5-star.
For Fourth Wing?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so
Nah.
much. Listen, okay. Here's a good tip for myself to when I know that I'm really, really liking a book, is when I'm doing other things, I'm like, I wanna go back to the world. I wanna go back.
Okay.
And I can't. I'm really excited for them to get together.
But it's so... I can't fight. There's no reason in it, so I can't fight it.
I'm like really...
But you know what's gonna happen!
It's gonna be like almost there. It's a slow burn. But it's burning! Okay, wait. Okay, I'm gonna show something to you guys that I sent to all my friends and I sent to him.
I think the wine increases the star rating by at least 1.
That is not true. I didn't feel this way for ACOTAR.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm thankful for Fourth Wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thankful because ACOTAR was pretty bad. So if at least Fourth Wing can just wipe ACOTAR from the social mindset, from the, the social hive mind.
I'm sorry, but dragons are so much cooler than fairies.
I agree.
I said it. I said what I said. We do have a video coming up soon where we did read a lot of the Goodreads top 40 books of 2023, because we actually have read several of them and we're going to give our hot takes on them in a video coming up soon. So if you have any other recommendations of books you want our takes on, as you can see, we're very hard to please. Yeah, I'm easier to please. He's much harder.
I'm not much harder to please. I think Fourth Wing is good.
So our reviews on them coming up might surprise you.
Meaning we didn't like them.